At the time of the murders, Joel Rifkin lived here at the family home in East Meadow, New York, just outside of New York City. When looking for clues as to why Rifkin became a serial killer, it is tempting to begin here to see if there was any past abuse or traumatic experience that may have triggered the violence.
Jean Rifkin still lives in the same house where many of the murders took place. She says she tries not to dwell on her son's gruesome crimes.
What's done is done, and I say, tomorrow is another day. It's the only way I can function. Because if I kept thinking about it, I'd go nuts. That's why I do the gardening and everything else, you know, it's keep myself busy.
To this day, she has trouble accepting the murders her son committed.
I really don't know how I feel. I mean, I can't forgive what he did, but I can forgive him.
Joel Rifkin was just an infant when he was adopted in 1959. Jean Rifkin remembers how thrilled she was to finally bring a baby home.
It was delightful. He was a very sweet, friendly kid, interested in a lot of things, but had a smile for everybody.
Another baby, a girl, was adopted a few years later. Both Rifkin and his mother paint the same picture of the family, one with plenty of love and support. They insist there was absolutely no abuse at home.
And in your childhood, no abuse of any kind?
Except for the schoolyards, no.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I did spank him once when he was a toddler, and I felt terrible afterwards, but he really deserved it. But that was the only time.
Rifkin impressed his parents with his curiosity, but early on he began to struggle. Severe dyslexia made it difficult to read, and physically he was extremely uncoordinated. His parents tried to help.
We gave him a lot of attention, and well, he was a very willing subject. I mean, he loved to be read to. So, I mean, he was always interested in everything.
Still, from an early age, Rifkin had trouble fitting in with other kids in the neighborhood.
We had a bunch of kids a little bit older than him, but some his age, right here in the neighborhood, and they used to play ball on the corner, and he would sit there, dying to play, dying to be part of the group. They wouldn't let him play.
Things were even worse at school, where Rifkin was brutally teased by peers.
I managed to hang on the edges. They kept basically pushing me away, and I kept coming back. And that caused a lot of other tensions in school.
His social skills were apparently not well developed. And I think this may have been one of the reasons that he was the patsy or the scapegoat so often.
From kindergarten to high school, Rifkin was the target of pranks and physical attacks. Everything from being shoved against a locker to having his head pounded against the ground.
If you wanted to make a name for yourself in school as a tough guy, they'd go after me.
Only rarely did Rifkin tell his parents about the attacks. When he did, they tried not to intervene.
What can you do if he's being bullied in the schoolyard? You can't go and say, you can't touch my baby, you know. So we just try to reassure him and try to show him that he can't allow this to happen, that he has to fight back even if he gets hurt.
But through all the pain and embarrassment, Rifkin never defended himself.
I kind of learned if you did fight back, you got really decked. It just wasn't getting hurt, it was getting beaten.
Then, in 1987, after a brief battle with cancer, Rifkin's father committed suicide. 2 years later, the killing spree began.
Most of the killings seemed to happen within a week of some type of personal anniversary or holiday. The first one was the second anniversary of my father's death.
Was Rifkin's killing spree somehow triggered by traumatic events like his father's suicide or his own experience of being bullied? In fact, over the years, scientists have found that many killers were taunted as children, raising the general question, can constant humiliation or abuse actually lead to violence? Dr. Peter Breggin, with the International Center for the Study of Psychiatry, thinks it can.
Most people who commit murder, in fact, don't feel strong, but but feel weak, ashamed. And every time we create situations where people are continually ridiculed and humiliated and put down, we are going to have violence.
But how do you actually prove the link between violence and past abuse? Dr. Craig Ferris from the University of Massachusetts is trying to answer that crucial question by studying hamsters.
This is an adult hamster. They're really a wonderful animal to study for aggression because...
Ferris chose hamsters because they exhibit aggressive behavior but never physically harm each other. He performs a social experiment on the animals that he could never do on humans, manipulating their environment to see exactly how abuse might affect aggression. He takes an adolescent hamster, marked here with green tape, and puts it in an abusive situation, the home cage of an older, bigger hamster.
The larger, more aggressive hamster will chase the smaller animal around. It'll threaten it, it'll nip it.
Even though the hamster is not physically injured, the constant threats drastically change its behavior. As an adult, the abused animal becomes more afraid of hamsters that are the same size or just a little bigger. But when faced with smaller, weaker hamsters, it becomes even more aggressive than normal and ruthlessly attacks them.
When we talk about this, people say, well, you've created the playground bully, that'll run and attack smaller, weaker children and run away from kids that are a little bit larger or the same size.
This change in behavior is fueled in part by a change in biology, in the body's response to the brain chemicals vasopressin and serotonin. After abuse, the hamster's brain becomes extremely sensitive to vasopressin, the attack chemical that tells the body to fight. At the same time, it becomes almost numb to serotonin, the brain's peacemaker. The result, when encountering a smaller hamster, the abused animal becomes highly aggressive, with nothing to hold it back.
I think this is just because the appropriate checks and balances aren't there between the serotonin and vasopressin systems.
The implications for humans worry Dr. Ferris.
There are a lot of principles and rules in neurobiology that certainly apply across different brains. And so if we're doing this to our hamsters, then you have to think that similar things could be happening to our kids.
Experiments in primates produce even more troubling results, suggesting that it does not always take physical abuse to change biology and behavior. Emotional abuse, or just growing up without supervision, seems to have the same results. In one remarkable study, young rhesus monkeys like these were taken from their mothers to grow up with only their peers. Without adult care, the young monkeys turned violent. Psychologist Gary Kramer conducted the experiments at the University of Wisconsin.
So aggression, or unusual aggression, if you will, is one of the legacies of not having a particular kind of early rearing experience.
For Joel Rifkin, did the childhood teasing and bullying leave a legacy of violence?
The only thing I can put my finger on is that all of this abuse over the years must have had a tremendous impact on him. But what the trigger was, why this one and not that one, that is something to be discovered.
I didn't plan to end up in Attica. Okay, a lot of guys who have very similar lives to mine, they don't end up in Attica. Not only do they end up in Attica, but they don't end up killing 17 people.